It's late afternoon on a cold winter's day, and you know there's a storm coming. You figure you've got plenty of time, so you stay at work a little bit longer. You go out, you're on your way home, and unfortunately, the storm surprises everybody, dumps a ton of snow. Temperatures begin plummeting, and traffic grinds to a halt. You are stuck on the interstate, no way to get out, and unfortunately, you just bought your fancy new EV. And because you've been on social media, you believe you have 3 hours of battery left before you start to freeze to death. Welcome back to All Cars Y'all. I am John, and that scenario is just not true. It circulated a lot about the beginning of January 2022 when a snowstorm hit Virginia, and people started circulating online pictures that said, thank gosh they're not in EVs because they'd all be dead. And I'm not an EV advocate per se, but there's so much misinformation about EVs that are thrown around online. I have slowly been going through the myths to decide what's true, what's not, poke holes in it, and truly educate myself about EVs instead of just, well, continuing the same baseless misconceptions that so many like to believe. Some of them I found have been true, some of them, most of them, almost all, have not, and this is one of the ones that's really bothered me, and I decided to dig into it and find the data to back it up. So what we're going to do is I'm going to take a Tesla Model Y, I'm going to take a similarly sized vehicle with a small four-cylinder engine, the BMW X3, and there's a reason I chose the smaller engine on this one, and then compare them of how they would perform and how long they would last if you were truly stuck and had to keep the heater on in your vehicle. And of course, this is not purely a hypothetical situation. It does happen. While most northern states are better equipped to plow and get people out in a timely manner, certainly in Virginia there was a problem. People were stuck overnight. And in the South, if we get an inch of snow, people tend to freak out and we just turn crazy and drive into ditches. So this is not purely a hypothetical. It is actually important. Now, there's a lot of variables here. And one of the misconceptions around this is that if it's cold enough, your battery is going to lose a tremendous amount of its power to begin with. That's true and partially true because most modern EVs have heat pumps which keep the battery warm and keep that charge in there, but you still can lose a little bit. So in this, we're going to take our BMW and our Model Y, and in both cases, we're going to assume that you don't have a full tank of gas, that you're about 90%. And then based on idling and running the heat, how long are you going to be able to, well, keep having heat? So let's look at the X3 first. So like I said, this is going to be the 2.0 liter four-cylinder version, and I'll show you why here in a second. And the BMW site says it has a 17.2 gallon tank. Now 90% of that means you're going to have about 15.5 gallons of gas available. Now thankfully, the government did a post where they actually studied the fuel usage at idle for different size cars. Now a small compact car, they are estimating a 2-liter engine, and this is assuming there's no accessories running, which includes not running a fan. But using that compact sedan, using that 2-liter engine, because we're just sitting there so we don't care about the weight of the vehicle, they are estimating about 0.16 gallons per hour used. Now, since we're trying not to freeze, we know we're going to be running the heat. That's a byproduct of the engine, but we do have to run the fan to push it around. So looking around and probably running the radio as well for updates, and Car and Driver looked at the situation as well, and they tested a Sonata, and they found out it idles used about 0.3 gallons per hour. So we'll use that just to kind of assume that we are running the fan and maybe the radio. Now we do the math. If we take this 15.5 gallons and divide it by that 0.3, you're going to be able to stay warm for about 51 hours. Next, we'll look over here at the Model Y. Now, this is a little more complicated. The Model Y has about a 74 kilowatt hour battery, which is coincidentally, I found, about 2.2 gallons equivalent of gasoline. So with a 90% charge left, we have a 66.6 kilowatt hours available to us. And here's where it gets tricky. There's no great answer as to how much power it will use just to run the heat. I found widely varying ones, but they did kind of coalesce at the end. And here's where it gets tricky. Estimates and real-world testing vary rather dramatically in how much power, how much energy you're going to use just sitting there running the heat. Now, an Oxford researcher estimated about 2 kilowatts. The Detroit Free Press ran an article where they also quoted someone who said 2 kilowatts. Modeling over in Norway actually shows somewhere between 3.4 and 4 kilowatts, but that drops to about 1 kilowatt if you have a heat pump. That jives pretty closely with Car and Driver, who did their own test on their own 2019 Model 3, setting it at 65 degrees inside with an average outside temperature of 15. They used energy at 1.6 kilowatt. So with most EVs having heat pumps, I'm going to estimate about 1.5 kilowatt. I think that might even be a little high, but I'm going to estimate that's how much they're going to use it here. So taking our 66.6 kilowatt hour available, divide by 1.5, you end up with about 44.4 hours. Coincidentally, the YouTube channel Dirty Tesla tested this on their Model Y that had a heat pump and estimated the battery would last about 36 hours, but that was setting the internal temperature to 70 degrees. When they lowered it down to 60, the endurance of that battery jumps up to almost 60 hours. So we're all right there in the same general area, that maybe that gas-powered car will last a little bit longer. Maybe it won't if you're super careful with your temperature inside the car, but it still does poke holes in this lie being propagated on the internet that if you get stuck in traffic in the cold, you have 3 hours. It's just not true. It's just pure fear-mongering by people about EVs. And while this one example I created, the gas might or might not do slightly better than your EV, the fact is you're not going to die overnight. As long as you have some level of charge or some level of gas in your car, it'll be able to keep a temperature to keep you warm enough to hopefully have people come if you're stuck there overnight. Now, this is all highly variable. We recognize that. The temperature you set it at, if you use other devices, if you try to watch a movie in your car while you're waiting, how cold it actually is the sun out or not? It's all going to be dramatically variable, but that really is going to impact you whether you're in the gas car or whether you're in the EV. The one big thing is that people will latch onto and say, yeah, but if you run your battery dead on the EV, nobody can just bring you a bucket of electrons to pour in. You've got to wait for somebody to haul you to a charger. Well, technically, yes, that's true. Somebody could always trudge through the snow several miles to bring you your gallon of gas to get down the road. But I don't see that as a huge concern as long as I'm alive. So if it was me and I was stuck in this situation, I'd set the temperature as low as I possibly could, and then I'd wait. And by the next day, hey, maybe I need to hike up to an off-ramp. Let me know your thoughts below, guys. Appreciate you being here.